The Galactic Council's Archaeological Division had always prided itself on its methodical approach to studying extinct civilizations. For over 3,000 cycles, they had carefully excavated the remains of dead worlds, cataloging artifacts, and piecing together the final moments of species that had fallen to war, disease, or simple entropy. The humans of Sol 3 were just another entry in their vast database of failures. Dr. Kethvar, a distinguished Zephyrian xenoarchaeologist with silver-scaled skin and 4 delicate arms, stood before the massive holographic display in the council chambers on Nexus Prime. Her research team had spent 2 full cycles studying the scattered remnants of human civilization across dozens of worlds. What they had found was both fascinating and deeply troubling. "Honored council members," Kethvar began, her voice carrying the melodic tones typical of her species. "We have completed our preliminary analysis of the human expansion zone. The species appears to have achieved faster-than-light travel approximately 400 of their years before their apparent extinction. They colonized over 200 worlds before vanishing entirely." Counselor Thexaron, a massive insectoid being from the Hive Collective, clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "Vanishing is perhaps too gentle a term, Dr. Kethvar. Our long-range sensors detected massive energy signatures from every single human world. Whatever destroyed them was thorough and simultaneous." The hologram shifted, showing a 3-dimensional map of human space. Each world glowed with a soft blue light, connected by thin lines representing trade routes and communication networks. It had been an impressive civilization by any measure, stretching across nearly a tenth of the galaxy's outer rim. "That brings us to the primary concern," Kethvar continued, manipulating the display to zoom in on a world designated as New Terra in the human databases. "Every human world shows signs of catastrophic detonation. The energy readings suggest weapons of unprecedented power, but we can find no evidence of any hostile alien intervention. No invasion fleets, no bombardment signatures, nothing that would indicate external aggression." Ambassador Veltaran of the crystalline hegemony pulsed with worried orange light. "Are you suggesting they destroyed themselves? Mass suicide on such a scale would be unprecedented." "Not suicide, Ambassador. Something far stranger." Kethvar's scales darkened with concern. "We believe we may have found the source of these explosions, and if we're correct, it represents a danger unlike anything the galaxy has ever seen." The chamber fell silent, except for the soft humming of life support systems. Representatives from 47 different species waited for her to continue, their various forms of anxiety evident in clicking, color changes, and nervous gestures. "We have discovered that humans practiced ritual burial of their dead," Kethvar explained, bringing up images of human cemeteries from various worlds. "This in itself is not unusual. Many species honor their deceased. However, the humans did something unique. They buried their dead with what they called personal effects, objects that held emotional or spiritual significance." She paused, letting the weight of her next words settle. "Among these personal effects, we have found hundreds of thousands of small metallic devices. Initially, we assumed they were religious artifacts or simple jewelry. However, detailed analysis has revealed something extraordinary. These devices are not artifacts at all. They are weapons." The hologram now showed magnified images of various human burial sites. Rows upon rows of graves stretched across rolling hills, each marked with stone monuments bearing names and dates. Beneath the surface, barely visible energy signatures indicated the presence of the mysterious metallic objects. "The devices appear to be some form of exotic matter containment system," Kethvar continued, her voice growing more urgent. "Each one contains a microscopic amount of what our physicists believe to be weaponized dark matter. A single device, if destabilized, could theoretically destroy a small moon." Counselor Thexaron's compound eyes widened in horror. How many of these devices are we talking about, Dr. Kethvar? Based on human population records and burial customs, we estimate approximately 47 billion of these devices are currently buried across 212 worlds. Her scales had now turned completely dark, a sign of extreme distress among her people. Each world essentially sits on top of a weapon capable of annihilating entire star systems. The implications hit the Council like a physical blow. Representatives began speaking urgently among themselves in dozens of different languages. The translation systems struggled to keep up with the flood of concerned voices. "Order! Order!" Councillor Thexron's voice boomed across the chamber. "Dr. Kethvar, what triggered these devices? What caused the simultaneous detonation across all human worlds?" Kethvar manipulated the hologram again, showing a timeline of the human extinction event. "We believe it was a quantum entanglement cascade. The humans appear to have linked all of these devices across space-time itself. When one was triggered, they all triggered simultaneously." "But what could have caused the initial trigger?" Ambassador Veltarin pulsed with deep red anxiety patterns. "That's what terrifies us," Kethvar replied grimly. "According to our analysis, the trigger appears to have been the death of a single human. Not just any death, but the death of the last human to die of natural causes." The chamber erupted again, this time in pure panic. The idea was so alien, so incomprehensible, that many representatives struggled to process it. A species that had weaponized their own graves, creating a doomsday device triggered by the natural end of their own existence. "The humans," Kethvar continued once order was restored, "appear to have made a collective decision. If they were to face extinction, whether from disease, war, or any other cause, they would ensure that their final act would be one of such devastating power that it would serve as a warning to the entire galaxy." She brought up recordings recovered from human databanks, showing their leaders speaking passionately about human dignity, about the right to determine their own fate, about ensuring that humanity would be remembered not as victims, but as a force that demanded respect even in death. "They called it the Final Protocol," Kethvar explained. "Every human who died was buried with one of these devices. Over the course of 4 centuries, they turned every single one of their worlds into a weapon, not to attack others, but to ensure that their extinction would be remembered." The philosophical implications were staggering. Here was a species that had faced the reality of mortality, not just individual mortality, but species-wide extinction, and had chosen to make that extinction itself into a weapon. They had literally weaponized death itself. "What are the immediate dangers?" Councillor Thexron asked, his military background forcing him to focus on practical concerns. "The devices appear to be stable as long as they remain undisturbed," Kethvar replied. "However, any attempt to excavate them or interfere with the burial sites could potentially trigger another cascade event. We have established a quarantine perimeter around all former human worlds and classified them as extinction-class hazards." "And the long-term implications?" Ambassador Veltarin's crystalline form had turned a deep purple, indicating profound concern. Kethvar's expression grew even more grim. "We're not dealing with an extinct species anymore, honored council members. We're dealing with the most powerful weapon ever created, spread across hundreds of worlds. The humans may be gone, but they've left behind a legacy that could threaten the entire galaxy." The hologram shifted one final time, showing the vast network of human worlds scattered across space, each one now marked with warning symbols and quarantine beacons. What had once been a thriving civilization was now a cosmic minefield, each world a potential trigger for galactic annihilation. "The humans understood something that we're only beginning to grasp," Kethvar concluded. "In a universe where species rise and fall, where civilizations bloom and wither, they found a way to ensure that their memory would be eternal, not through art or literature or monuments, but through fear. pure, rational fear of what they were capable of, even in death. As the council session ended and representatives hurried away to brief their respective governments, one thing was clear. Humanity was extinct, but they had never been more powerful. In death, they had achieved what they could never accomplish in life. They had made themselves unforgettable. 3 months after Dr. Kethvar's devastating report to the Galactic Council, the universe had fundamentally changed. The quarantine zones around former human worlds had become the most heavily monitored regions of space, with automated warning beacons broadcasting danger signals in over 400 known languages. But monitoring was just the beginning of the galaxy's problems. Captain Zarathul of the Confederation, Deep Space Patrol Vessel. Harmony's Edge stared at her tactical display with growing unease. Her ship, a massive kilometer-long cruiser designed for long-range exploration, was stationed at the edge of the human exclusion zone, around a world the humans had called New Eden. The irony of the name was not lost on her as she watched the sensor readings that had been keeping her awake for 3 cycles straight. Captain, her science officer, a trilateral being known as Nexim, approached with what passed for concern among his species. The gravitational fluctuations around New Eden have increased by another 12% in the last standard day. Whatever those burial devices are doing, they're not remaining dormant. Zarathul's reptilian features showed the strain of command. Her species, the Saurian Confederation, had been spacefaring for over 5,000 years, but nothing in their extensive history had prepared them for this situation. "Show me the long-range scans again, Nexim." The main view screen shifted to display a composite image of New Eden, taken from their maximum safe distance of 50 astronomical units. The planet appeared normal at first glance: blue oceans, green continents, white clouds swirling in familiar patterns. But beneath the surface, energy signatures pulsed like a massive heartbeat, growing stronger with each passing day. "The exotic matter signatures are definitely increasing," Nexim reported, his 3 voices harmonizing in worried tones. "But that's not the most disturbing part, Captain. We're detecting similar energy increases from 17 other human worlds within our sensor range." This was the nightmare scenario that the Galactic Council's Emergency Committee had feared. The human burial devices weren't just dormant weapons. They were somehow still active, still responding to unknown stimuli, even decades after their creator's extinction. "Any theories on what might be causing the fluctuations?" Zarathul asked, though she suspected she wouldn't like the answer. "Several. None of them comforting." Nexim manipulated the display to show energy readings from multiple human worlds simultaneously. "The most likely explanation is that the devices are responding to our presence. Think about it, Captain. We have hundreds of ships positioned around human worlds, constantly scanning, constantly monitoring. We might be inadvertently triggering some kind of defense protocol." The implications sent a chill through Zarathul's scaled skin. "You're suggesting that the humans designed these weapons to activate if their worlds were investigated by alien species?" "It's possible," Nexim replied. "The humans were remarkably paranoid about alien contact, according to the archaeological records. They spent centuries preparing for potential invasion or interference. It's entirely plausible that they programmed their final weapon to activate if foreign powers began studying their remains." Before Zarathul could respond, her communications officer interrupted with an urgent transmission from Galactic Council headquarters. The image of Counselor Thexron appeared on the screen, his usually composed insectoid features showing clear signs of stress. "Captain Zarathul, we need your immediate assessment of the situation in your sector," Thexron began without preamble. "We've received reports of energy fluctuations from monitoring stations throughout human space. The Science Division believes we may be approaching some kind of critical threshold." "Counselor, we're seeing the same fluctuations here," Zarathul replied. My science officer believes our monitoring efforts might be triggering a defensive response from the burial devices. Thexron's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. That possibility has been considered. Dr. Kethvar's team has discovered something else in the human databases that makes the situation even more critical. It appears the humans left behind detailed instructions about their final protocol. The screen split to show Dr. Kethvar herself, her silver scales now showing patches of stress-induced darkening. Captain Zarathul, we've found what the humans call the Dead Man's Switch documentation. It's essentially a user manual for their doomsday weapon. Zarathul felt her blood run cold. A manual? They wanted someone to find instructions for their weapons? Not someone, Kethvar replied grimly. They wanted aliens to find it. The entire document is written in mathematical principles that would be universal to any spacefaring species. They wanted us to understand exactly what we were dealing with. The implications were staggering. The humans hadn't just created a weapon. They had created a message, a final communication with whatever species might one day discover their remains. What do the instructions say? Zarathul asked, though part of her didn't want to know. Kethvar manipulated her display to show excerpts from the human documents, translated into Galactic Standard. The humans were very clear about their intentions. The burial devices are designed to remain stable indefinitely, but only under specific conditions. Any attempt to excavate them, any attempt to remove them from their resting places, any attempt to dishonor the dead, as they put it, would trigger an immediate detonation. But we haven't attempted any excavation, Zarathul protested. We've maintained the quarantine zones exactly as specified. That's not all, Kethvar continued. The devices are also programmed to respond to what the humans called species-level threats. If they detect the presence of a unified galactic government or military force studying their worlds, they interpret it as a potential invasion scenario. The horrible understanding began to dawn on Zarathul. The Galactic Council's response to their weapons is being interpreted by their weapons as the very threat they were designed to defend against. Precisely, Counselor Thexron confirmed. The humans created a weapon system that punishes exactly the kind of careful, coordinated response that any responsible galactic government would take when faced with such a threat. Nexum had been quietly analyzing the incoming data while the conversation continued. Captain, he interrupted urgently, I'm detecting massive energy spikes from New Eden. The fluctuations are approaching geometric progression. Zarathul turned back to the tactical display and felt her heart skip a beat. The energy readings from the planet had increased by orders of magnitude in just the few minutes they had been talking. Warning alarms began sounding throughout the ship as automated systems detected the approaching danger. Counselor, we may have a critical situation developing here, she reported, struggling to keep her voice steady. Recommend immediate evacuation of all monitoring vessels. Negative. Captain, Thexron replied, though his own voice showed strain. Dr. Kethvar believes that a sudden withdrawal of our monitoring presence could trigger the very response we're trying to avoid. The human documentation suggests that the devices interpret rapid changes in their environment as hostile action. Zarathul stared at the display in disbelief. So we can't stay, and we can't leave? Welcome to humanity's final joke on the galaxy, Kethvar said bitterly. They've created a weapon that punishes us for caring enough to monitor it properly, but also punishes us for being callous enough to ignore it. It's a perfect trap, designed by a species that understood game theory better than we ever gave them credit for. The energy readings continued to climb, and Zarathul could see similar reports coming in from other monitoring stations throughout human space. Whatever threshold the burial devices were approaching, they were approaching it simultaneously across hundreds of worlds. There's more, Kethvar added reluctantly. The humans' documentation includes detailed projections of what they called galactic sterilization scenarios. They calculated exactly how many of their worlds would need to detonate simultaneously to create a cascade effect that would render the entire galaxy uninhabitable for carbon-based life. "How many?" Zarathul asked in a whisper. 47 worlds, Kethvar replied. They need 47 simultaneous detonations to achieve galactic sterilization. We currently have verified burial sites on 212 worlds. The silence that followed was deafening. Every being in the conversation understood the mathematics. The humans had built their weapon with a safety margin of over 400%. They hadn't just planned to destroy themselves. They had planned to potentially destroy all life in the galaxy. "Captain," Nexum reported quietly, "I'm now detecting energy fluctuations from 41 different human worlds within our sensor network." Zarathul closed her eyes, feeling the weight of galactic civilization pressing down on her shoulders. "How long until they reach critical threshold?" "Based on the current rate of increase," Nexum calculated rapidly, "approximately 72 standard hours. 3 days. The galaxy had 3 days to figure out how to defuse a weapons system created by a dead species that had anticipated every possible response to their ultimate threat. As Zarathul looked at the display showing energy levels climbing toward catastrophic levels across dozens of worlds, she realized that humanity had achieved something no living species had ever managed. They had made their extinction everyone else's problem. 68 hours after the countdown began, the galaxy held its breath. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been running continuously for 3 days, with representatives from every major species debating solutions that ranged from desperate to impossible. The energy readings from 47 human worlds had reached 93% of calculated critical threshold and rising. Dr. Kethvar stood before a massive holographic war room display that showed the real-time status of every monitored human world. Red warning lights pulsed in perfect synchronization across hundreds of star systems, creating a heartbeat of impending doom that echoed through the chamber. Her research team had worked without sleep, desperately searching the human databases for any solution, any overlooked detail that might save galactic civilization. "Honored Council," she began, her voice hoarse from exhaustion but filled with newfound urgency, "we believe we have found something. It may be our only chance." The chamber, filled with representatives who had been arguing for 3 straight days, fell silent. Ambassador Veltaran's crystalline form had turned a deep black of despair, while Councillor Thexaron's usually steady mandibles trembled with fatigue and stress. The humans included something else in their dead man's switch documentation, Kethvar continued, bringing up a new section of translated human text. They called it the Respect Protocol. We initially dismissed it as psychological warfare, but our xenopsychology experts now believe it represents genuine human philosophy. She manipulated the display to show excerpts from human writings about honor, dignity, and the treatment of the dead. The texts spanned their entire history, from ancient burial customs to their most advanced philosophical treatises. The humans valued something above even their own survival, she explained. They valued being remembered with respect. The burial devices aren't just weapons, they're tests. Tests of whether future species would treat human remains with the same reverence humans showed to their own dead. Councillor Thexron's compound eyes focused intently on the display. "Are you suggesting that there's a way to disarm these weapons by honoring human burial customs?" "More than that," Kethvar replied, her scales beginning to show faint patterns of hope. "According to the documentation, the burial devices can be permanently stabilized through what the humans called proper memorial protocols. The weapons will deactivate if the burial sites are treated not as archaeological curiosities or military threats, but as sacred spaces deserving of respect. Ambassador Veltarin pulsed with confused orange light. Sacred spaces? We're dealing with weapons of mass destruction, not religious sites. To the humans, they were both, Kethvar explained patiently. That's what we failed to understand. These aren't just burial sites that happen to contain weapons. They're memorials that happen to be defended by the most powerful weapons ever created. The humans were telling us that they would rather destroy the galaxy than allow their dead to be dishonored. The philosophical implications were staggering, but practical concerns were more pressing. What exactly do these memorial protocols require? Thexron asked. Kethvar brought up detailed specifications from the human documentation. Each burial site must be formally recognized as a memorial to human civilization. The graves must be maintained according to human customs. Most importantly, each site must have what the humans called a guardian, a representative of an alien species who pledges to protect and honor the human dead. Guardianship. Admiral Kreshatar of the warrior clans spoke for the first time in hours, his scarred features showing thoughtful consideration. The humans want us to swear oaths to protect their graves. Exactly, Kethvar confirmed. But it goes deeper than that. The Guardian isn't just a caretaker. According to human custom, the Guardian becomes responsible for ensuring that the memory of the dead is preserved accurately and respectfully. It's a sacred trust that the humans believed would bind alien species to act honorably. The chamber erupted in debate once again, but this time the tone was different. Instead of panic and desperation, representatives were discussing logistics, philosophy, and the unprecedented idea of establishing formal diplomatic relations with a dead species. Captain Zarathul's image appeared on the main screen, transmitted from her position at New Eden. Council, we're now at 97% of critical threshold. Whatever decision you're going to make, it needs to happen now. Counselor Thexron's voice cut through the chaos. Dr. Kethvar, can we implement these memorial protocols remotely? Can we transmit the required acknowledgments to the burial devices? No, she replied grimly. The human documentation is very specific. The Guardian pledge must be made in person at each burial site by a living representative of an alien species. The humans designed their final protocol to require direct, personal commitment. That's impossible, Admiral Kreshatar protested. We have burial sites on over 200 worlds. Even if we had volunteers willing to risk their lives, we couldn't reach every site in time. We don't need to reach every site, Kethvar corrected. The human documentation indicates that the weapons are linked through quantum entanglement. If we can successfully establish Guardian protocols on the 47 worlds currently approaching critical threshold, the effect should cascade to all connected sites. Captain Zarathul's tactical display showed energy readings climbing past 98%. Counselor, I volunteer to attempt the Guardian protocol at New Eden. If it works, we might be able to save the galaxy. The risk is enormous, Thexron warned. If the protocol fails, if we've misunderstood the human requirements, you'll be vaporized along with everything else in the system. And if we do nothing, we're all dead anyway, Zarathul replied with grim determination. At least this way, we die trying to honor the dead instead of treating them as a military problem. Similar volunteers emerged from monitoring stations around 46 other human worlds. Captains, science officers, even some council representatives volunteered to personally travel to human burial sites and attempt the Guardian protocols. It was the most desperate diplomatic mission in galactic history, attempting to negotiate with the dead to prevent the destruction of the living. As the energy readings hit 99% of critical threshold, 47 brave souls stood on human worlds before ancient graveyards, following instructions left by a species that had been extinct for decades. They spoke words of respect and remembrance, pledged to protect and honor human graves, and formally accepted the role of guardian for human memorial sites. The response was immediate. The burial devices, which had been climbing steadily toward detonation for 3 days, suddenly began stabilizing. Energy readings dropped rapidly as the weapons recognized the formal acceptance of Guardian protocols. One by one, the red warning lights on Dr. Kethvar's display turned green as burial sites across the galaxy registered the successful establishment of memorial protections. But something unexpected was happening as well. As the Guardian protocols took effect, the burial devices began transmitting, not weapons signatures or threat warnings, but data. Massive amounts of data containing the complete cultural archives of human civilization. They're not just burial sites, Kethvar whispered in amazement as the transmissions poured in. They're time capsules. The humans stored their entire civilization in these memorial sites. Art, literature, music, scientific knowledge, philosophical treatises, everything that made humanity what they were. The final transmission came not as data, but as a simple message in clear galactic standard. Thank you for remembering us with honor. We entrust our legacy to your care. In death, the humans had achieved something remarkable. They had forced an entire galaxy to acknowledge their worth, to treat their memory with respect, and to accept responsibility for preserving their civilization. The species that had faced extinction had found a way to achieve the closest thing to immortality possible. They had made themselves unforgettable. As Captain Zarathul stood in a human cemetery on New Eden, reading names carved in stone monuments under an alien sky, she realized that humanity had taught the galaxy something profound about dignity, respect, and the power of memory. The humans were gone, but their greatest achievement wasn't their technology or their expansion across the stars. Their greatest achievement was proving that even in death, even in extinction, a species could demand respect and receive it. The galaxy would remember humanity not as a threat, but as teachers who showed that every civilization, no matter how small or brief, deserved to be honored. The human burial sites remained under the protection of their alien guardians, and the galaxy was forever changed, not by conquest or technology, but by a simple demand that the dead be treated with dignity. In their final act, humanity had made every species in the galaxy a little more human.